It's Denise Rehner again, and we're going to start the therapy roundtable. We are so excited to have an A team of therapists joining us today. And, for so many of us parents, our lives are spent in therapy sessions, PT, OT, vision, swimming, and it really does fill a lot of our day, and we try our best to learn from all the different therapists to be able to come home and replicate and reinforce the learning for our kids. So today we're going to be hearing from a speech therapist, occupational therapist, and a vision therapist, because like I said, so many of us, so many of our kids do spend a lot of time in therapy. So first up, I'm going to hand it over to Jill Tullman. She is a speech therapist, and she's going to provide an overview of speech services. So Jill, when you're ready, go ahead and share. There you go.
Okay. Hi, thanks, Denise. Welcome, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to spend the next 6 or 8 minutes cruising through how we can be supporting communication and participation in individuals with GRIN disorders. About us and about myself, I am a speech language pathologist, and I have been specializing in augmentative and alternative communication for 28 years. I am the owner of Jill Tullman and Associates, which is an augmentative and alternative communication speech language pathology private practice. We have 2 offices in Colorado in the United States. We're also very fortunate to have an occupational therapist on our team who has expertise in wheelchair seating, positioning, access to assistive technology, and sleep positioning. In terms of GRIN disorders, we are really fortunate to work with 3 children who have GRIN disorders and their families. We work with Bowen, we work with Denise and her son Brett, and we work with Caitlin. When we talk about individuals with GRIN disorders, as you all know, individuals with GRIN have a variety of abilities and disabilities, and they also have different degrees of communication impairments. They need access to language and communication that's meaningful, motivating, and allows them to communicate, interact, and participate in their environments as fully as possible. Here's a picture of Caitlin with 2 of my amazing colleagues, Mary Frances and Erin. And in this picture, they are supporting Caitlin to make choices while they're interacting with the communication application, as well as an app on an iPad. When we talk about kiddos with GRIN, as well as all of us really, our kids need to be able to communicate for a variety of different reasons and purposes. They need to be able to make choices. They need to be able to express preferences, express their wants and needs. In addition to this, they need to be able to request, to share opinions, to protest and refuse. They need to be able to direct. They need to be able to comment, ask and answer questions. And again, you'll hear me talk about this a lot. They need to be active participants in interactions and activities throughout their days across environments. On this slide, you'll see a picture of Brett. His communication device is overlaid in this picture. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this really well, but Brett started off a session by saying, "Let me tell you how I am feeling. I'm happy. I'm tired." And if you look at Brett in this picture, he clearly was happy and he was also a little bit tired. So many individuals with GRIN disorders can benefit from augmentative and alternative communication. Some of you are probably really familiar with augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. Others might be less familiar, and perhaps for some of you, this is new. So when we talk about augmentative and alternative communication, we're really referring to any tool, strategy, or technique that enhances, replaces, augments, or supplements an individual's ability to communicate when he or she is unable to communicate using verbal speech, or perhaps the child has some speech, but by no means is his or her speech sufficient to meet their daily communication needs. So when we talk about AAC, it includes a lot of things. It includes no tech, and by no tech, we're really referring to nonverbal communication. We all use this to augment our own communication. I'm talking to you. I don't know if you can see this, but I tend to talk with my hands. I see you down the hall, and I wave, I gesture. So gesture and body language, those are forms of augmentative communication. Lots of our kiddos also use sign language. They use real and inventive signs to communicate. We also have more or other types of augmentative communication. Light tech or low tech, meaning non-electronic ways to communicate, as well as high tech using technology. When we talk about light tech, we're talking about representing words or concepts with pictures or symbols. So we can use photos to represent what we want. In this example, there's a water bottle. Depending on the child's understanding and how the child interacts and represents things, this water bottle could be used to communicate water, could be used to communicate, I want my water bottle, could be used to communicate drink, and it also could be used to communicate thirsty. We can also use symbols to represent words and concepts. These are 3 different examples of different symbol sets that are out there. And then there are different types of low tech, and again, meaning non-electronic communication systems. This is an example of a communication board that can be used for an individual to interact and play while blowing bubbles. Many of you might have heard of PECS, or the Picture Exchange Communication System, as well as POD, Pragmatic Organization of Dynamic Display. Those are 2 other types of light tech communication systems. In addition to light tech, then we move on to high tech. High tech involves speech generating devices or communication devices, as well as communication applications for eye devices. Speech generating devices, or as we call them, communication devices, are dedicated devices, meaning they have been developed specifically for the purpose to serve as a communication device. Many of our kiddos are unable to use their hands functionally, or perhaps they can use their hands, but their fine motor skills are delayed, and they're unable to isolate an index finger or to point or activate a wide array of symbols on a device. Communication devices have built-in alternative access options, meaning if I can't use my hands, how else can I activate what I want to say on a communication device? Examples of that include scanning and eye gaze capabilities. The communication devices, some of them also have built-in environmental aids to daily living. EADLs is the fancy term or the acronym. And these are functions within a communication device that allow individuals to turn electronics on and off. For example, they could turn their TV on and off, change the volume, change the channel. We also have, as I mentioned, communication applications for eye devices. There are certainly some for tablets, but the majority have been developed for eye devices. And there are over 250 communication applications in the iTunes store that are available for immediate download. Features and costs of these communication applications vary greatly. I've represented 4 of some of the more popular ones: Go Talk Now from Attainment Company, Avaz, TouchChat, and Proloquo to Go from Assistiveware. So what we know, AAC interventions, strategies, and tools must be individualized for our kiddos. They need to be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. And more than anything, they need to be fun. In these 2 pictures, in the first picture, you see Brett during a telepractice session. Thanks to the pandemic, interacting with Aaron. He's also smiling for the camera because he's a clear ham. You'll see a red button on his tray, and that's a switch that he uses to activate his communication device, which is also in the picture. In the next picture, you see Aaron working with Bowen. This picture was taken yesterday. Bowen loves to read, so Aaron's introducing fall vocabulary to him, and they are reading a story together. So why do interventions need to be fun and motivating? Because communication should not be any harder than it has to be. We all learn best when we're doing things we enjoy, when we're doing things we're familiar with, and also when we do and practice new skills during naturally occurring interactions. So we really should never be practicing to communicate. Rather, we need to be supporting our kids to communicate all day long. And here in this picture, Mary Francis, another awesome speech therapist who I work with, is supporting Caitlin to do just that. So during the pandemic, we want to be incorporating communication opportunities into everyday routines and familiar activities. You know, we're all maxed out. Some of your kids are not in school. You know, you're doing online learning. We don't want to add anything to your plate, but rather we want to really find activities that your child enjoys, and just as importantly, that you enjoy, where you can build in lots of opportunities for your kids to make choices, indicate what they want, direct, while you guys are just having fun. A big motto in our practice is if we, the adults, are not having fun, then our kiddos aren't having fun, and life is too hard, especially now, not to be having fun. So I know I need to stop talking. I just wanted to share this, some wonderful AAC resources. Kate McLaughlin is the AAC coach, and she has posted amazing handouts about information and just general strategies about augmentative communication and activities on modeling and how to support our kiddos doing lots of different things. She has these handouts. They're free and can be downloaded in multiple languages as well. So I am going to turn this over to Denise. I look forward to answering your questions later, and thanks for the time.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was great. I don't see any questions in the chat right now. So I think I'll just go ahead and hand it over to Danielle. Danielle Braman is the owner of Purple Turtle Therapy. Are you able to share your screen? Oh, you know what? We can't hear you now. No, I think the audio was switched. We heard you earlier, but we're not hearing you now. If you want, I can go ahead and turn it over to Cindy. We'll let Cindy go first and then get your assistant back. Okay, we'll go ahead and so Cindy Champagne, you're a vision therapist out of Louisiana. So over to you.
I am. All right.
So sorry, hold on. Okay, my button, sorry, at the top of my screen it says to start broadcast. Are you guys seeing live or start broadcast?
Mine just says stop broadcast, so I think we're broadcasting.
Okay.
Because if I hover over the telephone, it says end, which I don't want to do. It says stop broadcast. I had started it earlier.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, good. Sorry.
Go, Danielle.
You want to go ahead and go now?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Are we live?
Yes, we are live.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
Okay, good. We have some other folks joining.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Denise. My name is Danielle Braman. I am an occupational therapist, and I am excited to be here. So I did just a really basic overview of what occupational therapy is and how OT can help your child, and I gave you some strategies for some home programming ideas. So about me, I have been an occupational therapist for almost 10 years. I have worked in a variety of settings, inpatient, outpatient, rehab clinics. Currently, I'm also working at a hippotherapy clinic. I have history with aquatics. And I've also trained in yoga therapy and started a research study on the benefits of yoga therapy.
Hey, Danielle, just real quick, can you put your slide in slideshow mode so we can see it bigger?
So on my screen, I do have it in slideshow
Okay,
mode.
okay, that's okay.
Okay. Okay. So
Sorry.
is it okay, or do you want me to try?
No, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, so I just opened a practice on Purple Turtle Pediatric Therapy, offering in-home therapy. And I am also certified in neurodevelopmental treatment and DT and yoga therapy. My experience with clients, I have currently one client diagnosed with GRIN disorder. However, I have seen multiple clients over the years with a variety of diagnoses that are similar in presentations to GRIN disorder, including hypotonia, fluctuating tone, cortical visual impairment, generalized muscle weakness, lack of coordination, and sensory processing disorder. So I believe a lot of us know what OT is, especially if your child is currently receiving OT. But I do think it's good to kind of take a step back and just go over areas and things that we could really help in. So this is, when I treat clients, this is my approach. And this kind of goes from a top-down approach. So overall, as an OT, what I'm trying to do is find ways to have engagement in meaningful activities. And for each individual and each family, it's different. So I use the example. So a family is really interested in having their child go to the park with them. And that would bring, it is participation in a leisure activity. It's good bonding between family members. So that is the overall meaningful activity that this child wants to participate in. So the functional participation is, what would we have to do to get that child ready to go to the park? So eating, having breakfast, lunch before they go, getting that child dressed, how much is that child participating in that dressing routine? And then sometimes for some kids, transitioning to the park, is it difficult for that child to make that transition from being home and getting out? Or how is that family going to transition their child to the park? Is that child able to possibly sit in a bike and be pushed to the park? Or do they have to go in a wheelchair? And then to break it down even more, thinking about how that child could participate, what foundational skills as an OT do we need to work on to improve that participation? So with eating, is it working on grasping to grasp the spoon or grasping food? Is there a deficit in balance? And if we improve the balance, will that promote more participation in the dressing and putting pants on? Motor planning, sequencing, range of motion, strength. So all those things could fit into those different functional skills that are needed for that child to engage in that meaningful activity.
Hey, Danielle, we're not seeing your slides advance. I don't know if you're advancing them or if you're on like a preview mode.
Huh. Okay. So I'm seeing them in slideshow.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Now we're moving. Yes.
Is that better?
Yes. Thank you.
Oh,
I
okay.
think you probably skipped. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so that's where I was. Sorry, guys. Okay, so are we good here? Yes. Okay. So questions that I usually ask families and try to figure out areas to address. So what would make your daily routine easier? Is there a part of the daily routine that is challenging? So every morning getting dressed is a very challenging and timely process. So that could be something that we could look at. What routine does your child struggle with the most? Or what does your child want to be more independent with? What is meaningful for you and your family to participate in? What motivates your child? And this one, what is necessary for your child to do? Not that we want to force anything, but kids have to go to school. So what part of that getting ready for that school, getting ready for school and leaving, could we help make your life easier? So some activities, so going back to those foundational skills, breaking down those meaningful activities, some strengthening activities, and this is very broad and it is based on where your child is currently at and level of functioning, but some activities to think about for strengthening. Weight bearing on hands and knees, so that would be in a quadruped position. That's great for shoulder strength, hand strength, as well as weight bearing into the hips. Side sitting, and that's putting weight on one arm, again, shoulder and hand strength. Sitting with various degrees of support. The less support you have on, maybe transitioning your child from a supported seat to having him sit in front of you and providing different degrees of support will challenge his core muscles. Transitioning from lying to sitting, rotating to the right or left side. That's kind of a choppy sentence, but I really feel that our kids overuse their middle oblique or middle abdominal muscles. And when we transition and do a small turn to the right or left, we're engaging the obliques, which overall increases core strength and postural muscles. Having your child pushing, pulling, carrying different toys or items, performing tall kneeling during play, and then activities that range of motion activities, pushing the arms through sleeves of shirts, reaching up towards desired toys or in front of them, playing games with singing and dancing head, shoulders, knees, and toes, pulling squigs off the window. Those are little suction cup grasping objects. They're great. And then a functional task is washing the table, washing windows, helping you clean up after dinner. Visual motor, you could be activating cause and effect toys, reaching and grasping for toys, coloring, placing stickers on paper, cutting out different lines and shapes, stacking or building blocks. And then the last one is praxis. And I'm not sure if that's an OT term that we sometimes use. Praxis is a 3-step process where kids think of an idea, they motor plan the idea, and then they problem solve through that idea when they're not successful. So ways to improve praxis, helping them get ready for bed, brush their teeth, put their pajamas on, climb into bed, read a story. Again, getting ready to go to the park. Another area, thinking of chores that you could break down for your child that's appropriate, unloading the dishwasher, doing laundry, simple folding washcloths, help pushing the buttons on the washing machine. And I put visuals, schedules, and pictures are very helpful here to help your child with the sequencing and the motor planning. And that is all I have for home programming and an overview of OT. So,
thank you so much, Danielle.
Thank you.
Let me go back to the chat, make sure we didn't miss any questions. I think these are more on communication. So Any questions for Danielle, please put them in the Q&A and we will ask at the end. But at this time, we have Cindy Champagne. She's a vision specialist. Many of our kids do have visual and cortical visual impairment. So Cindy, over to you.
Hey, my name is Cindy Champagne. I am actually a teacher of blind students, or you may have heard the term teacher of the visually impaired, TVI. I want to talk a little bit today about GRIN and CVI. We know that CVI, or cortical visual impairment, is the type of visual impairment we're dealing with our GRIN kiddos. How did I get into the GRIN world? Well, I was blessed to have two of kiddos, Carter Williams and also Catherine Ludke, on my caseload. Both have GRIN 1. Both suffer from cortical visual impairment. When I first started working with Catherine and pretty much also with Carter, both of these kiddos were basically functionally blind, meaning that they were not interacting with their world very much at all visually. So what exactly is CVI? CVI is a congenital or acquired brain-based visual impairment. It most likely has an onset in childhood unless you're dealing with traumatic brain injury later. It's unexplained by an ocular disorder, meaning that the eyeball, the optic nerve, all of those eye system structures are normal, okay? So we know that an ocular disorder cannot explain that the child cannot see. And it's associated with unique visual and behavioral characteristics. CVI can have a genetic cause. A lot of your older ophthalmologists don't know that, and I think it's important that parents be educated. First of all, they refer to CVI as cortical, quote unquote, blindness. And if the child has any type of visual activity or engagement at all, they tend to think it's not CVI. That's not necessarily true. I've had ophthalmologists give a diagnosis of delayed visual maturation at the age of 2, and they shouldn't be giving that diagnosis above the age of 1-year-old. We know, and we can educate our professionals, that they can make a diagnosis of CVI if their patient meets the following four criteria. The child has to be at least 6 months of age. And again, that gets into that delayed visual maturation area. We want to give time, especially with our kiddos who have been born prematurely, to give that visual system enough time to mature and eliminate that situation. The vision loss is not explainable by abnormalities you find on the eye examination. The child has a medical diagnosis that affects the brain. We know that our GRIN kiddos can have a presentation of CVI. And the child will show 1 of 10 unique visual behaviors. Now, what are those visual behaviors? The child may show a color preference. In Carter's case and in Catherine's case, those kiddos always preferred bright red. So that tells us that items that we're using for visual motivators or items that we're using to get them use their vision, we want to use red, right? They have a need for movement. So what does Mylar? Mylar has a shiny property and it looks like movement. Mardi Gras beads have shiny surfaces, looks like movement. We have visual latency involved, visual field preferences, difficulties with visual complexity, sensory environment, array, faces, complexity of objects. Do they look at objects that are one color or two colors? Do they look at objects that have patterns? They have a need for light, difficulty with distance viewing, atypical visual reflex responses. Sometimes those don't ever resolve. You know, when you touch your child in between their eyebrows, do they blink? When they have a hand flying at their face, do they have that threat response where their eyes close? Kids with CVI typically do not have that. Absence of visually guided reach, difficulty with visual novelty. This is the great thing about CVI as opposed to an ocular visual impairment. We know because of the neuroplasticity of the brain and through intentional targeted interventions that the functional vision of children with CVI can and does improve. Say that one more time. Functional vision can and does improve. So by implementing the right interventions for where your child is and using their vision and encouraging them to use their vision, we know that their vision does improve. And that's huge for our kids. As far as looking at COVID-19 and an in-home prescription, if you're don't have a diagnosis of CVI yet, or you know that the 10 characteristics I'm going to show you guys on the PCVIS website, that you're seeing those things in your kids. These are some things that you can do at home. Know that CVI is a known condition for children with GRIN. They don't have to have seizures present. We know that CVI shows up in our GRIN kids. Visit PCVIS, that is the Pediatric Cortical Visual Impairment Society, to gain a better understanding of CVI. Take those 10 characteristics that they talk about, that we just talked about, and does your child exhibit at least 1 out of 10 of those unique visual behaviors? Do they not look at you in the face? Do they not attend to faces at all? When they're in a noisy environment, do you find that they don't use their vision? Do you find that they are unable to attend to a complex video? Do you find that they don't pay attention to cartoon images? Seek out a CVI range assessment from a teacher of the visually impaired who is knowledgeable about CVI to better understand how your child's vision functions. Why is that important? That range assessment tells us where your child is in those 10 characteristics. So one of my jobs as a teacher of the visually impaired is to support our related service providers. For example, I know that if Carter is his vision is functioning in phase 2, I know that Carter is not going to be able to visually engage with line drawings or cartoon images. So that CVI range assessment and that knowledge is important to tell the speech language pathologist who's working with him on AAC and working with him on choices with that, to let them know, hey, we need to customize his buttons to where we're using pictures of real objects on a black background. We know that I've got to spend time as his teacher teaching Carter the salient features. You know, what makes Elmo Elmo? Elmo has red fur, big round googly eyes, and an oval squishy orange nose. So I teach those things and pre-teach them to where the speech pathologist can come in with that picture and he already knows it's Elmo. And then we implement intentional targeted interventions based on their score on that range. And the important thing to mention is we can't think about this as vision therapy, okay? We've got to think about it as, I know my child has these visual behaviors and needs. How can I modify and adapt their daily activities to make it easier for them to use their vision? So this is a good starting place. Know where your child is on the range. I want to go through a few websites for you guys that will give you a little more information. I could sit here and talk about this for hours. Can y'all still see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Little Bear Sees is a very good website. That Little Bear Sees was actually published by a parent of a child with CVI. So it's a lot of things on here from the parent perspective. This is one of my kids' favorite apps. It's called Tap and See Now. It has a line drawing of a solid, say for a solid teddy bear, and it bounces around the screen. So you've got movement. It gives them an auditory feedback on when they tap it. So you learn in cause and effect and that type of stuff. That's a good website. This is the Pediatric Cortical Visual Impairment Society website. This is one of the best CVI websites I have ever seen set up. And if you click on everything that's available, they have tabs available for medical professionals, so we can teach them that they can indeed give us a CVI diagnosis. I know Lauren actually had to have her CVI range done prior to getting the diagnosis because her doctor was not willing to give the diagnosis of CVI until she got that document in her hands. We have information for educators and therapists. We have information for families and caregivers. What are some things that you can do? We know that active learning is very, very important for our kids. We can modify active learning for their CVI by knowing that range. This is called activelearningspace.org. And you can go to implementation right here and click on CVI. And they have tags with activities. They talk about the different phases. If you look here, for example, with this kid right here, that's too much. So for a kiddo who's performing lower on the range, do we put a single red item and let him interact with one thing? Strategy2see.com is a wonderful website. They have a lot of do-it-yourself projects here. Let's see. If we look at a light-up spring, for example, if you're trying to get them to move, she walks through how to make a light-up slinky. So you would have this hanging in a black tent, for example, with the child laying under the tent, under the light to work on, reaching to midline for something. So it's modifying the things we're using, and that's a picture of what it looks like, modifying the things we're using for where they are in their visual performance to support daily activities. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Cindy. We have a couple of questions in the chat I wanted to get to. One person is asking, is it true that behavioral issues can be attributed to CVI?
Yes, behavioral issues can be contributed to CVI. It's basically called a CVI meltdown. I need to figure out how to stop screen sharing. Hold on. Am I back? Okay. It's called a CVI meltdown. The child is so overwhelmed visually, and their brain has worked so hard to try to figure out what they're seeing that they just have to shut down, and it's frustrating. I know a lot of kiddos with CVI who have been misdiagnosed for ADHD. Imagine not being able to visually process what you're seeing, not having modified materials in a classroom, and the child is trying to engage. Well, they're spaced out, they're looking around, they're trying to look at something, they're light gazing, they're staring up at the lights at the ceiling, and it's just to give themselves a break. So absolutely that can happen.
Thank you. We have just one more minute before we need to close. I just wanted to circle back with Bill. There was a question about the INAT, what is that therapist method? Danielle, is that pronouncing it correctly? Can you hear me, Jill?
Yeah.
They just wanted to get your perspective on that practice.
Okay, can they give me more information what the question is? I must be thinking about the wrong person because I thought that was a physical therapy question. You're
right. Okay. Danielle, you might be familiar with that, the Danielle practice? No? Okay. That's okay.
Denise, we'll follow up and see if it's speech or motor related, and we will get that info to you to share. Sorry.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for these great presentations, and thank you for all your thoughtful questions. We're at the end of the session. We have next coming up are some tracks. We have Meet the NMDA Receptor. We have a track on GRIN, GRIA, and GRIN, GRID genes. And we also have a Spanish meetup. So we'll go ahead and stop this broadcast, and we'll go ahead and see you in the next sessions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.